The call came on a Tuesday. I was eating lunch, scrolling through emails I wasn't going to answer, when my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail. But something in me, maybe a reflex, maybe muscle memory, clicked accept before I could think better of it. Mr. Ellison? The voice was polite. Practiced. The tone of someone who delivers bad news often enough to have softened the sharp parts. Yes, I said. This is Caroline Tilley. I'm a probate attorney out of Jackson County. I'm calling regarding your father, Richard Ellison. And just like that, the name cracked the room open. He'd been dead for 3 weeks. No one told me. No one had to. He didn't have a wife. No friends. No pastor or poker group or support group or anyone who would have thought to find his son and say, "Hey, just so you know, the bastard died." Caroline told me the coroner found him in the armchair. TV on. Half-empty bottle of bourbon on the table. No signs of struggle. Natural causes, she said. Peaceful, from what they could tell. I said nothing. She continued. You're listed as the sole beneficiary of the estate. I let that sit in my mouth like something sour. There's a house. The one on Ridgeview. Some savings. A truck. Nothing complicated. But the will was clear. He left everything to you. I almost laughed. Because of course he did. He spent a lifetime not giving me a single goddamn thing I needed, and now, all of a sudden, I'm the heir to his mess. I thanked her. Got the address for the key pickup. Hung up. Then I sat at the table for a long time, staring at my sandwich like it might have the answer. What do you do when the man who hurt you leaves you his home? Do you sell it? Burn it? Walk through the rooms like they owe you an apology? Do you go back at all? Claire asked me that night, while folding towels. What are you going to do? I shrugged. I don't know. You don't have to take it. I know. You could. I know. She didn't push. That's the thing about Claire. She leaves space. The kind no one in that house ever gave me. 3 days later, I drove there. The key was in a manila envelope at the lawyer's office, along with a printout of the will. I didn't read it. I didn't want to see the words, loving son, or, in good faith, or any other lie they used to tie up the legal ends of an untied life. I drove past the old gas station, past the elementary school I barely remembered, past the lake we used to fish at before he started coming home too drunk to stand. The neighborhood hadn't changed much. Still quiet. Still ordinary. Still holding its secrets like hands behind its back. The house was at the end of the street. Brick. 2-story. Shutters crooked from a storm no one had fixed. The lawn hadn't been cut in months. The porch light was off. I stood there with the key in my hand, staring at the door. It didn't feel like coming home. It felt like trespassing. Like the place was holding its breath, waiting to see if I'd really do it. I slid the key in, turned, and stepped inside. The air was stale. That was the first thing. Old smoke, something metallic, something gone. Not death. Just the scent of someone who stopped opening windows a long time ago. The furniture was the same. Couch. Armchair. Coffee table with a chipped corner I'd cut my chin on when I was 6. It was like stepping back into a painting. Nothing had moved. But everything had stopped. I walked through the rooms in silence. Didn't touch anything. Didn't speak. In the hallway, I passed the photo wall. Still there. Still the same lineup, him in uniform. Him with the dog he liked more than people. Him and me, once, my 4th birthday, me in a plastic cowboy hat, him standing behind me with one hand on my shoulder like he wasn't sure how it got there. I stared at that one the longest. The frame was cracked. I left it that way. In the kitchen, the dishes were clean but dusty. The fridge was nearly empty. Some bread. Expired milk. A beer or two. A box of baking soda turned brown at the corners. I opened the cabinet where he used to keep the bourbon. Still there. Still half a shelf dedicated to forgetting. I made it upstairs. To the bedrooms. His was untouched. Bed made, sheets tucked military tight. Closet full of flannel and denim and jackets that smelled like everything I'd run from. Mine was smaller than I remembered. The posters gone. The desk still there. My old initials carved into the underside of the top drawer, J.E., scratched in with a screwdriver. One summer I was bored and angry in 13. The air was thick. Not haunted. Just waiting. Like the house knew I had work to do. I didn't cry. Not there. Not yet. I just stood in the hallway, between our rooms, and said the only thing I could think to say. Well, I'm back. And the house said nothing. Like always. It started in the hallway. Just past the foyer. Left of the staircase. The spot where the light always burned out too fast, and no one ever replaced it. That smell, his smell, still hung there. Like smoke that never found an open window. A blend of cheap cologne and aftershave, something peppery and too strong. Mixed with sweat. Leather. Cigarettes he never admitted to smoking. And underneath it all, the sour edge of whiskey that soaked into the carpet after he spilled it, then cursed the glass for breaking. I stood there and closed my eyes. The house exhaled. And I remembered. The last time I stood in that hallway, I was 17. He'd slammed a door. I'd shouted back. Something about curfew. Something about respect. Something about how he wasn't really there anyway, so what did it matter? He grabbed my arm, too hard, and I pulled away. Said I'd leave? He told me I didn't have the guts. I proved him wrong. And I never really came back. I moved into the living room. The couch was the same, tan, frayed, sagging in the middle where his body had carved a trench over years of late-night television and beer. I sat down. The cushion wheezed. And there it was again. The smell. The deepened fabric scent of skin and bourbon, and days that blurred together. I could almost hear the static of the TV. His boots on the coffee table. The clink of ice in a glass he never offered me. He never let me sit here. This was his seat. Mine was the floor. I leaned back, let the air hit my face, and for a second, just 1 second, I felt 12 again. Watching a man I didn't understand spiral into himself, night after night, while I pretended I didn't care. In the kitchen, the scent shifted. Still familiar. Still heavy. But different. Here, it was linoleum and mildew. Old grease in the vents. The faint perfume of fried meat that never left, even when the food did. This was where he cooked when he was in a good mood. Pancakes on Sundays. Burgers when he wasn't drinking. Steak on the nights he felt like performing. He didn't talk while he cooked. Didn't let me help. But I'd sit at the table and watch, pretending we were something like normal. Smelling the butter. The char. The momentary illusion of warmth. The refrigerator buzzed louder now. Like a machine gasping in its final hours. I opened it again, hoping for what, I don't know. Inside, the same beer. The same box of baking soda. A plastic container with something green that used to be food. I closed it. Opened the cabinet above. His whiskey bottles were still lined up like soldiers. Even the empty ones. That struck me. He never threw them away. Just refilled. Replaced. Rearranged. But never discarded. Like he needed proof of the habit. Of how far he'd gone. Or maybe how far gone he was. The garage hit me hardest. The second I opened the door, it rolled over me like heat off a flame. Gasoline. Motor oil. Dust. Rust. And him. God, so much of him. His boots used to stomp this concrete like it was sacred. Workbench in the back corner, still stained with whatever he last touched. Pegboard wall with wrenches, hammers, a rusty saw that still had wood shavings stuck in its teeth. The smell was violence and order, wrapped in a mechanic's robe. This was his church. And I wasn't allowed in. Except to pass him tools. Not that one. He'd bark. I'd flinch. Try again. He never said thank you. But he always kept the rag I handed him. Tossed it on the bench like a flag marking the end of a shift. I leaned against the wall. Closed my eyes. Let the scent of the garage wrap around me like it used to. Felt my shoulders tighten. Felt the old instinct rise, stay small. Stay quiet. Stay out of the way. That's what this room taught me. How to shrink. Upstairs, the air changed. Less dense. Less sour. My bedroom smelled like dust and paper and something else. Something I couldn't name at first. It wasn't pleasant, exactly. But it wasn't sharp either. I opened the closet. The scent hit me like a whisper. Pencil shavings. I'd forgotten. That's where I used to sit. When the house got too loud. When the air downstairs turned to glass. When I needed to disappear. I'd crawl into that closet with a notebook and a pencil, and I'd draw. Badly. Mostly monsters. Things with big teeth and giant hands. Things that couldn't be hurt. Things that could fight back. I'd fallen asleep in there more than once. The closet held that. Held me. Held a part of me I hadn't visited in decades. I walked into his bedroom last. The air was still. Not just quiet, still. Dead in a way that felt intentional. The bed was made. Top sheet taut. His pillows still indented where his head had rested last. I walked around the room slowly. Opened the nightstand. Prescription bottles. Reading glasses. A folded note that just said, "Don't bury me in a suit." I didn't. There was no photo of me in his room. Not one. But there was a scent I couldn't mistake. Something buried under the cologne and age and linens. Salt. Like tears. Like something uncried, trapped in the walls. I stood there until I couldn't anymore. Then I walked out, shut the door gently behind me. The whole house reeked of him. Not just his body. His presence. His rules. His storms. His silence. It was soaked into the wood. Into the floorboards. Into the walls I once pressed my ear against, listening for the next explosion. They say smell is the strongest tie to memory. I believe them. Because I didn't have to see him. Didn't have to hear his voice. To know he was still here. Somehow. Watching. Waiting. But now the house is mine. And the smell doesn't get to win. It was in the bedroom closet. Buried beneath a stack of flannel shirts and a folded flag he never told me the story behind. I almost didn't see it. Just a cardboard shoebox with duct tape down the middle. On top, in thick sharpet. "Keep out." I stared at it for a while. Then laughed. Because of course he labeled it like that. Because everything in this house came with a warning. And every warning felt like a dare. I brought it downstairs, sat at the old kitchen table, and opened it. Cassettes. Dozens of them. No cases. No labels, just dates. Black marker on white stickers, some peeling, some smudged. They started in the late 90s. Ran through the early 2000s. Tapered off after that. The last one was dated 5 months before he died. Beneath the tapes was a small recorder. Old. Dusty. Batteries crusted in place, but somehow still working. I popped one in. Press play. And my father's voice filled the room. At first, it was nothing. Just breathing. The creak of a chair. The clink of glass on wood. Then his voice, low, rough. "Test. Test. Jesus, is this thing even on?" A pause. Then a sigh. Then, "All right. Fine. It's just me, then. That's fine. That's all it's ever been." I sat back. Heart tight. He sounded tired. Not in the way he was when he came home late. Not the drunk slurring or yelling. This was something else. Worn down. Exposed. The tape went on for 10 minutes. He talked about work. The guys he couldn't stand. The boss he wanted to punch. A pain in his hip that made him limp in the mornings. He said, "I don't tell anyone this stuff. I don't talk. That's the point, isn't it? No one wants to hear a man whine. You hold it in. You keep it together. Then silence. Then a long sip. Then, almost a whisper. But it gets loud in here. Some nights I think if I don't say it out loud, I'll choke on it. The tape clicked off. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. Just sat there with the recorder in front of me like it was a loaded weapon. Then I put in another. March 2001. Rained all day. I didn't leave the house. Sat in the chair. Stared at the wall. Thought about driving somewhere and not coming back. Didn't do it. Still here. Lucky me. Another one. I saw James at the store today. He didn't see me. He's taller now. Looks like he's figuring shit out. Good. He should. He's better off without me. And another. I hate this house. I hate how quiet it is when he's gone. I hate that I did that. I hate that I still sleep on the right side of the bed even though there's no one here. Each tape was different. Some were drunk. Slurred. Angry. They don't get it. Nobody does. You try to hold it in your hands and it slips right through. Some were quiet. Measured. I think I was supposed to be more than this. I think I missed it. Whatever it was. And one, just one, was about me. I don't know how to be a father. Never had one. Don't remember mine. Just know I didn't want to be like him, and somehow I still screwed it all up. James, if you ever hear this, hell, I don't know. I'm sorry. That's all I got. I played that one 3 times. Not because I liked it, but because I needed to be sure I heard it right. He said my name. He said sorry. And it didn't sound like a performance. It sounded like someone trying to scratch something off their chest before it hardened there forever. I thought hearing him would make me angry. But mostly, I felt hollow. Like someone had knocked on a part of me I didn't realize was a door. Because for all the rage I carried, for all the memories I held up like evidence in some private courtroom, I never imagined him alone, in the dark, talking to a machine because there was no one else. I spent hours with those tapes. Didn't even notice the sun go down. Just sat in the kitchen with the lights off, the recorder clicking on and off like a metronome for grief. He talked about the war. The first time he saw someone die. How he came home and didn't recognize himself in the mirror. How he tried to quit drinking. How he failed. How he stopped trying. I don't blame anyone but me. That's the thing no one believes. But I do. I know who screwed it up. I just never knew how to fix it. I stopped after that one. My hands were shaking. I went outside. Sat on the porch. Lit a cigarette I didn't want. And I asked the air. Was that supposed to make it better? The wind didn't answer. But the ache in my chest said no. Not better. But different. Those tapes didn't change what he did. Didn't undo the damage. But they did something else. They made him real again. Not just a monster. Not just a ghost. A man. A broken one. And now his voice lives here. On plastic. In loops. In rooms that still smell like him. And somehow, now that I've heard him, the house feels different. Still haunted. But not by rage. Now it's haunted by what he almost said. And that might be worse. The garage was colder than I remembered. Not in temperature, though the concrete floor chilled up through my shoes, but in mood. In presence. The air hung heavy with motor oil and steel. A sacred stillness. Like something had been waiting. The workbench stood at the far end. Exactly where it always had. Bolted to the wall, scarred and swollen with use. I used to think of it as an altar. Even as a kid. Not because it was holy, but because it was untouchable. This was his space. And the rules here were unwritten, but absolute. No talking. No standing too close. No asking what he was making unless you wanted to be yelled at. I walked toward it now with the hesitation you'd reserve for a sleeping animal. Like one wrong step might wake something that had teeth. The surface was a mess. Not in the careless way, but in the way that says, I know where everything is, don't move a damn thing. Tools lined up along the pegboard above it. Wrenches by size. Screwdrivers with the paint rubbed off their handles. A level that still had a piece of masking tape across it with the words, straight enough, in faded marker. The bench itself was carved into. Not on purpose, just slowly, over years. Grooves from clamps. Cigarette burns. Nail scars. Stains I didn't want to think about too long. And then, beneath the bench, I saw the stool. Metal legs. Tape cushion. The seat where he used to sit in silence, a beer sweating beside him, a broken thing in his hand and something else broken inside his chest. I pulled open one of the drawers. It squealed. Inside, drill bits, a rusted tape measure, a bag of screws, a photograph folded in half. I took it out carefully. It was of me. 7 or 8 years old. Holding a wooden birdhouse in both hands. Wide smile. Missing tooth. My father was just out of frame, but I knew he'd taken the picture. He never framed it. Never showed it to anyone. Just buried it here. As if the only place he could hold something gentle was under a bed of tools. There were other things too. A pocket knife I remembered begging to hold. A small box of wood shavings. A notebook water-damaged, filled with shaky diagrams, plans for shelves, boxes, repairs that never got made. One page caught my eye. Fix garage door before winter. Reseal deck. Figure out what to do with James's drawings. That one stopped me. I hadn't thought about those drawings in years. He used to glance at them when I brought them home from school, cartoon monsters, scribbled comics, and just grunt. Not good. Not bad. Just a noise. I thought he didn't care. But here it was. A note. A thought he never said out loud. I sat down on the stool. Felt it groan beneath me. And I remembered how often he'd sit like this, back hunched, jaw clenched, hands covered in sawdust and silence. My father didn't know how to talk. Not really. His hands said more than his mouth ever could. And when they didn't know how to say love, they picked up tools instead. He built shelves. Fixed hinges. Rewired lamps that didn't need rewiring. Not for fun. Not for pride. But because building was the closest thing he had to forgiveness. There was a small box under the bench. Old. Locked. I knew the key was in the top drawer. It always was. Inside, a carving. A small wooden boat. No sails. Just a hull, sanded smooth. Painted dark blue, chipped at the edges. It fit in the palm of my hand. I stared at it for a long time, wondering when he made it. Why he never gave it to me. Or maybe he meant to. Maybe he didn't know how. Maybe he thought I wouldn't want it. Maybe he was right. I stood up. Placed the boat on the bench. Tried to imagine him here, just him, a piece of wood, the noise of his thoughts hammering behind his eyes. I thought of all the things he could have said. And all the things he didn't. And all the things he tried to make instead. Shelves. Birdhouses. Boxes. Silence. I looked around the garage again. At the tools. The grit. The effort. At the grief built into the grain. And I realized. This was his language. Wood. Metal. Work. And he used it the only way he knew how. To hold the things he couldn't name. To push back the ache. To try. I left the garage without touching anything else. Didn't take the boat. Didn't rearrange the bench. Just closed the door behind me. And whispered, I hear you now. I almost didn't go in. The crawl space was the one place in the house I'd avoided. Not because I was afraid of what might be in it, but because I was afraid of what might not. Some part of me needed there to be nothing left to find. No more clues. No more messages. No more half-truths buried like landmines. But the house kept pointing at it. The low creak behind the hallway closet. The subtle draft near the floorboards. The way my name seemed to echo harder in this corner of the house. So I opened the hatch, grabbed a flashlight, gloved up, dropped to my stomach and slid inside. It smelled like rot and insulation, like rust and dirt, and something that had been forgotten longer than it deserved. I moved slow, elbows first, body dragging across plastic sheeting that crackled under my weight. The ceiling was barely 2 feet high. Every movement required a crawl. Every breath stirred up dust that tasted like memory. The light caught something in the back. Not shiny. Not glowing. Just deliberate. A box. Wooden. Old. Locked with a simple latch that had rusted itself shut. I yanked it loose with my pocket knife. The lid creaked. And there they were. Letters. Dozens of them. Bound in rubber bands. Some in envelopes. Some not. Some written in pen. Others in pencil so faded I had to squint to make them out. None had been mailed. There were no stamps. No addresses. Just names. Dates. And anger bleeding off every page. The first one was to his brother. I didn't even know he had a brother. You should have been the one to stay. You were the one Mom loved. I don't blame her. I never fit right. You could do no wrong, and I could do nothing else. Another was to a woman. Unclear who. I didn't leave because I didn't love you. I left because I didn't know how to sit still without setting myself on fire. Another was just labeled. To God. You can have what's left. I don't want it. I don't believe in you, but if I'm wrong, then do something. Say something. Or shut up and let me go. Page after page. Unfiltered. Uncensored. Unsent. And then. One with my name. Not. Son. Not. James. Just. To the boy I broke. I stared at it for a long time. Didn't open it right away. My hands were sweating inside the gloves. My breath had slowed. I felt 10 years old again. I felt 35. I felt everything. I peeled it open. The handwriting was jagged. Hard to follow. Like it was written through clenched teeth. It wasn't long. Just 3 paragraphs. I wasn't supposed to be this. I didn't want to be this. But I didn't stop it either. And that's the part that eats me. You were kind. Even when I didn't deserve it. I saw the way you waited to be seen. And I kept turning away. I told myself I was teaching you how to be tough. How to survive. But really, I was showing you how to disappear. I think I ruined love for you. And if that's true, I hope one day you burn this letter. I hope you scream. I hope you don't forgive me. But if you do, if even a piece of you does, then I want you to know, I was always proud of you. I just didn't know how to say it without choking on the shame. That last line. It hit like a hammer. Not because it fixed anything. But because it knew it couldn't. I read it twice. Then I sat in the dirt with my back against the beam, letter on my lap, flashlight flickering, and I whispered, "You didn't ruin love." And I realized I meant it. He didn't take it from me. Not completely. Because here I was. Reading the words he never sent. Holding the apology he never spoke. And still finding room in my chest to care. The crawl space held more letters. More ghosts. But I didn't read the rest. Not yet. Some pain needs to wait its turn. I took the letter addressed to me. Sealed it back in its envelope. Slid it into my pocket like a match I didn't know when I'd need. I crawled back out. Closed the hatch behind me. Stood up in the hallway. Brushed the dirt off my jeans. And said out loud, "That's enough for today." It wasn't closure. It wasn't peace. But it was something. A thread. A tremble of something close to healing. She caught me on the 3rd day. I was hauling old wood out of the garage, splintered shelves, broken chair legs, a cabinet I didn't remember him ever finishing, when I heard her voice across the fence. "You're James, aren't you?" I turned. She was leaning over the chain-link divider, elbows resting on the metal like she'd been waiting a long time to say something. Late 60s, maybe? Gray curls pulled into a tight bun. Gardening gloves in one hand, a trowel in the other. No makeup. Just presence. I wiped my hands on my jeans. Yeah, I said. That's me. She smiled, soft, sad, a little surprised to see me in the flesh. I figured. You've got his walk. I almost said I hope not, but didn't. Her name was Margaret. She'd lived next door since before I was born. Had watched the house across the fence age like a bruise, slowly, then all at once. Sorry for your loss, she said, though it didn't sound like a condolence. More like protocol. I nodded. You knew him? She gave a little shrug. As much as anyone did. She invited me over for coffee the next morning. Not out of politeness. Out of something else. Obligation, maybe? Or empathy. Or just the heavy truth that she carried part of this story too, and now it was time to hand it off. Her house smelled like basil and lemon. Lived in. Soft. Framed photos lined the mantel, grandchildren, a wedding that looked like it happened last century, a cat mid-yawn in perfect blurry chaos. We sat at a small table near the back window. She poured our coffee into chipped mugs and said, like she'd been practicing it, "He wasn't always how you remember him." I stiffened. Then relaxed. Then leaned back and said, "Okay. Tell me." She began with small things. That he always brought her trash bins up on Tuesdays. That he salted her steps every winter before the sun came up. That he fixed her fence without asking and never accepted the $20 she tried to give him. He didn't say much, she said. Not unless he'd had a drink. Then he said too much. I smiled into my mug. Yeah, I said. I remember that. He was cruel to you, she added quickly. It wasn't a question. She didn't flinch when she said it. Just laid it there like a card on the table. I don't know what you saw, I said. I saw the way you stood, she replied. Like someone taught you to make yourself smaller. That stuck. I didn't respond. Just let it land. He used to talk to my husband, she said. Years ago. Before Bill passed. About what? She looked out the window. Mostly your mother. That surprised me. He talked about her. More than anything. Said she was the only thing he ever got right. I almost laughed. She'd disagree. I know, Margaret said. But he didn't. She told me a story I hadn't heard. One summer, I was 12. He found a stray dog by the side of the road, limping, filthy, ribs showing. He fed it, cleaned it, built it a little shelter behind the garage. Kept it there for a week. Never told me. Never told anyone. Then one day, it was gone. I remember thinking I'd heard barking. But when I asked, he told me I was imagining things. Why wouldn't he say anything? I asked. Margaret sipped her coffee. Because kindness embarrassed him. That silenced me. Because it made sense in a way I hated. He was angry, she said. But not just at you. At himself. At time. At everything. She looked over her cup at me. But I think, in his own way, he wanted you to come back. I shook my head. I don't think he ever believed I would. Maybe not, she said. But he still cleared your mother's old chair every time he passed it. Like he expected her to sit back down. We sat in silence after that. The kind of silence that doesn't ask to be broken. Then Margaret stood. Went to the hallway. Came back with something in her hands. A photograph. She slid it across the table. My father. Standing in her yard. Smiling. One hand resting on the back of a small wooden bench. The one in her garden. It was dated 5 years ago. He built this for me, she said. Told me it was to repay a favor I never gave. I stared at the photo. He looked older than I remembered. Less like a father. More like a man trying not to collapse. Did he ever talk about me? I asked. Margaret met my eyes. Every time he saw you drive past, she said. He said your name under his breath. Like it hurt to say out loud. I took the photo with me when I left. She said I could have it. Said maybe it was time to see him how others did, not instead, but alongside what I knew. Both things can be true. He was cruel. He was kind. He was empty. He was trying. He broke things. He built things too. That afternoon, I sat on the porch. Held the photo in one hand. The letter from the crawl space in the other. And I thought, this doesn't change what happened. But it does change the shape of the silence. It was inside the old man and the sea. That book had sat on his nightstand for as long as I could remember. He never read it, not that I saw. The pages were stiff, the cover faded, the corners softened with time. But he kept it near, like a talisman. Like something sacred he didn't understand, but didn't dare throw away. I only opened it because I was packing. The house was nearly empty. Most of the furniture gone. Photos boxed up. Tapes labeled and stacked, ready to be stored or burned, I hadn't decided yet. And then there was the book, still sitting there, like it was waiting for a final glance. I picked it up, let it fall open on its own. Page 73. A soft thud. And then, a photo slid out. I almost didn't catch it. It fluttered toward the floor, landing face up on the hardwood, perfectly still. I froze. Because it wasn't a photo of me. But it looked like it could have been. The boy in the picture was maybe 8, maybe 9. Short dark hair. Big eyes. Long limbs. A smile that wasn't quite practiced yet. He stood in the yard. Our yard. Behind him, the porch railing, the swing set I broke my arm on, the doghouse we built together when I was 5. Only this version of it looked new. He wore a red windbreaker. I never had one. And scrawled on the back in black ink, faded from time but still legible. Tyler. Spring '89. Tyler. Not me. Not a name I knew. Not a name I ever heard inside this house. I stared at it like it might rearrange itself if I waited long enough. But it didn't. It stayed exactly what it was. Evidence. Of what I didn't know yet. But it felt dangerous. I flipped through the rest of the book. No more photos. No letters. No scribbled explanations in the margins. Just that single image. One boy. One season. One name. A name that felt like it had teeth. I took the photo to the kitchen. Set it under the light. Studied it like it could speak. And what it said was, this doesn't add up. Spring of '89, I would have been 4. We were living in a rental house across town then. Mom was still alive. My father was still pretending. We didn't move into this house until 2 years later. But the photo was taken here. And the boy wasn't me. I called Margaret. Told her I found something strange. She came over, looked at the picture, squinted hard. That's him, isn't it? She asked. No, I said. That's not me. She blinked. Looked again. God. He looks like you. I know. She took a breath. Sat down. Then she said something I didn't expect. There was talk. Years ago. Talk? She nodded, slow. Picked at her thumbnail. Didn't look at me when she said it. That he had another kid. Before your mother. No one ever confirmed it. He never spoke about it. But someone mentioned it once at a block party, said he'd had a son, years ago, didn't raise him. Did Mom know? If she did, she didn't let on. I felt like the air in the house changed. Like the walls had been waiting for this secret to surface. Like the photo had teeth after all, and they'd bitten down. I thanked Margaret. Told her I needed time. She nodded. Didn't ask questions. She understood. Some truths don't come clean. They bleed on the way out. I spent the night going through his files. Drawers. Cabinets. Every envelope. Every tax return and hospital bill and expired car registration. Nothing. Not a mention of Tyler. No birth certificate. No school photo. No trace. Just this one frozen moment, a boy in a yard, smiling like he knew nothing yet. I sat on the floor at 2 a.m., staring at the photo. And I wondered, was Tyler the beginning? The first mistake? The first fracture? The reason he learned how to leave things behind? Or was he the ghost before me? The one I was raised in the shadow of, without even knowing? And then the deeper question. Was he still alive? Did he know about me? Did he get a letter? A tape? A name scratched on the back of a photo that he'd never see? Or was he buried too? In silence. In shame. In this house, metaphorically or otherwise. I don't know which possibility scared me more. That my father had another son and forgot him. Or that he didn't. And just chose not to tell me. The next morning, I slid the photo into my journal. Not to forget. But to hold it somewhere soft. Somewhere real. Because whatever the truth is, we shared him. Even if either of us asked to. Even if either of us got what we needed. Even if our names never crossed in his mouth. Now the house feels even quieter. As if it's keeping one last secret pressed into the corners. And I don't know if I want to find it. But I know I will. Because the silence isn't going to lift itself. It was the last drawer in the workbench. I'd left it unopened on purpose. Not because I didn't know what was inside. But because I did. Even as a kid, I knew that drawer had a different lock. That it opened with a different key. That it was heavier than the others, not in weight, but in consequence. My father never said what was in it. But once, when I was 10, I reached for it by accident while looking for sandpaper, and he snapped. Not loud. Just sharp. Not that one. His voice was cold. Final. Not angry, but clear. You don't touch that drawer. So I never did. Not until now. The key was taped to the underside of the bench. Still there. Still wrapped in black electrical tape. Still stuck with old glue and secrecy. I peeled it free. Held it in my palm. It felt too small for what it was about to unlock. The drawer creaked open slowly. And there it was. A revolver. Black steel. Worn handle. The smell of oil and old metal rising like something ancient. Next to it, a small box of ammunition. A cleaning kit. A folded piece of paper with a single sentence scrawled on it. For emergencies only. I stared at it for a long time. Didn't touch it. Didn't breathe. Just looked. Because I understood immediately that this drawer wasn't about protection. It was about control. This was the backup plan. The quiet exit. The power he never felt he had, made visible in cold steel and 6 hollow chambers. And I wondered how many nights he'd opened this drawer. Just opened it. Stared. Asked himself the same question I was asking now. What if? My father never pointed a gun at me. But he didn't have to. It lived in the walls. In the way he slammed doors. In the volume of his footsteps. In the grip he had on his belt buckle when I talked back. He taught me that violence didn't need a trigger. Just proximity. Just possibility. Just a silence that weighed more than the room could hold. I reached down and picked it up. It was heavier than I expected. That kind of heavy that doesn't come from metal. It came from memory. From what I thought this house had already given me, and what it had hidden, waiting, in the dark. I stood in the garage with the gun in my hand and the rest of the house behind me. And I felt it. Not fear. But recognition. This wasn't just his gun. It was the embodiment of everything I had never wanted to become. I didn't grow up with bruises. Not on my body. But there were bruises in the space between us. In the way I flinched when he raised his voice. In the way I learned to be quiet when men got angry. In the way I still, sometimes, check the exits when a room got too loud. That's what violence does when it hides. It teaches you how to walk carefully in your own home. I put the gun back in the drawer. Sat on the stool. And thought about what it meant to inherit something like this. Because it wasn't in the will. He didn't label it for me. Didn't say, "Give this to James." But he kept it. In the room where he taught me what a man was supposed to be. And that silence, that choice. It said enough. I took the gun outside. Set it on the table behind the house. Next to a rusted tin ashtray and the remains of last fall's leaves. I stared at it until the sun dipped low enough to cast it in shadow. Then I called someone. A friend from college. Works in disposal. Firearm retrieval. Legal. Clean. He said he'd be here in 2 days. I said, "Good. I don't want it here anymore." He asked if I wanted it transferred to my name. I said no. That night, I slept differently. Not easier. Not peacefully. But cleaner. Like I'd pulled something out of the walls. Like I'd found the last sharp edge in the house and made the decision not to keep it. I didn't tell Claire about the gun right away. Not because I was hiding it. But because I needed to sit with what it meant. When I finally did, she listened carefully. Then she said, "You did the right thing." I nodded. And something in me loosened. I still wonder how close he ever got. If he held it. If he loaded it. If he stood in this garage with the same weight in his chest I'd felt earlier that day. I'll never know. But maybe that's the point. There are some legacies we don't speak about. They live in drawers. In sighs. In raised voices that end too suddenly. And we carry them, quietly, into the lives we build next. But not this one. Not me. Not in my house. There comes a point when a house stops being a home. When the walls stop echoing. When the rooms stop holding you hostage. When the ghosts quiet down, not because they're gone, but because you've stopped listening. And what's left is just wood. Drywall. Brick and dust and memory fading into air. That day came slowly. Like breath returning after being held too long. Like a bruise finally going yellow. And when it did, I knew what I had to do. I made 3 piles. Keep. Give away. Burn. It felt stupid at first. Simplistic. Like I was dividing a life into categories too small for the pain they held. But it helped. It gave shape to the fog. The keep pile was small. 1 photo. 1 letter. The carved wooden boat from the garage. A few tools I knew I'd actually use, not just hoard. The photo of Tyler, his face still mysterious, still unanswered. I kept that too. Not because I wanted it. But because some stories don't get conclusions. Only reverence. The giveaway pile was heavier. Flannels that still smelled like his cologne. Framed photos I didn't want to burn but couldn't bear to look at. Books he never read but shelved proudly. I donated them to the shelter down the road. Didn't tell them where they came from. Just passed them through the window and said thank you when the woman smiled. She said, "Bees'll find a home." And I believed her. The burned pile was sacred. Tapes he recorded while drunk and angry. Old letters that weren't mine to keep. Receipts from bars. A belt I remembered far too vividly. The photograph I found in the workbench, the one where he looked happy, but I knew what came after. And the notebook. The one where he wrote things he never said. I read it once. Then I closed it. And added it to the pile. Some things are only meant to be heard once. I built the fire behind the house. Where the swing set used to be. Where I first learned how to climb. Where I broke my arm the summer he stopped coming to baseball games. It felt fitting. To burn the past in the place it had first betrayed me. The wood caught quickly. Papers curled. Ink turned to smoke. Plastic hissed and folded in on itself. And I stood there with my hands in my jacket, watching it all go. Not triumphantly. Not bitterly. Just fully present. Like a witness at a funeral where no one showed up except the person who needed to. The flames lit up the yard. Made the shadows dance on the side of the house. And in the flicker, I saw the outline of everything that would not follow me. Every silence. Every slammed door. Every sentence that started with, "You think you're tough?" Gone. Not forgotten. But released. When the fire died down, I scattered the ashes. Not for ceremony. But because I didn't want them to gather. Didn't want them to solidify. This wasn't a grave. It was a clearing. The next morning, I opened the windows. Let the air move. Let the house exhale. It smelled like ash. Like old smoke and something sweet beneath it. Like something trying to begin again. I stood in the hallway with the front door wide open and said quietly, "It's done." I called Claire. Told her I'd be home in 2 days. She didn't ask if I was okay. She just said, "I made your favorite. It'll be waiting." And I realized then. This wasn't about making peace with him. It was about making space in me. So there'd be room for something else. Something warmer. Something alive. That night, I slept on the floor of my old room. No furniture. Just a blanket and my coat. And I dreamed of nothing. For the first time in years. I didn't say goodbye. Not out loud. Not to the walls. Not to him. The last morning came like all the others, gray light through the curtains, floorboards groaning under familiar weight, the heater clicking on too late to matter. But the difference was in me. Something had settled. Not in the soft way. More like a brick finding its place in a foundation after years of hanging crooked. I was done. I took one final walk through the house. Not to remember. Just to make sure. That nothing was left behind. That everything that needed to be burned was gone. Everything that needed to be kept was packed. Everything that was either had been laid to rest in my chest, where I could decide later what to do with it. The living room looked like a stage set after the play ends. Empty walls. Sunlight catching the corners where dust used to gather. The chair he died in was gone. The silence wasn't. But it had changed. Less like a threat. More like a room that had finally stopped holding its breath. The kitchen was cleaner than I ever remembered it. Counters wiped. Cabinets closed. Floor swept of memories that had clung sticky to the tile. No more sour milk. No more empty bottles. No more unsaid things simmering under the burner. Just space. I touched the edge of the sink, then let it go. Upstairs, my old room was hollow. But not sad. Just done. I left one thing on the floor, the photograph of Tyler. Face down. Not out of spite. Not out of erasure. But because that story wasn't mine to finish. I whispered, "I hope you found better," and closed the door. His bedroom was last. I hadn't stepped inside since the night I found the letters. Since the crawlspace. Since the gun. It still smelled like dust and history. But fainter now. Less like it was trying to prove anything. The bed was stripped. Closet empty. Drawers bare. I walked to the window, opened it one last time, and let the wind in. It felt like a breath being returned to the sky. Downstairs, I picked up the last box. Not heavy. But meaningful. Inside. The boat. The letter he wrote me. The tape with my name. A wrench I'd taken from the bench. A few pieces of the man. Enough to remember, but not relive. I stood in the doorway. Looked at the threshold. The spot I used to stand barefoot, afraid to speak. The place I last saw my mother's car disappear down the street. The place he stood the night he told me, "This is my house, and you don't get to question it." Now it was mine. But I didn't want it. Not the house. Not the version of manhood it tried to make me swallow. Not the rules carved into the doorframe. So I stepped out. Turned back. Closed the door. And locked it. No tears. No speech. Just the sound of the key turning, and a quiet voice inside me saying, "That chapter's done." I didn't keep the key. I dropped it in the mailbox. Let the new owners figure out the rest. It wasn't my job anymore. On the drive home, the sky turned golden. One of those afternoons where the light makes everything look softer than it is. I rolled the window down. Let the air in. Didn't play music. Didn't call anyone. Just drove. With one hand on the wheel, and the other resting on the box beside me. Claire met me at the door. Didn't say anything. Just hugged me longer than usual. When she let go, I said, It's done. She looked at me. Are you okay? I thought about it. Then said, Not yet. But I will be. That night, I sat on the floor of my daughter's room while she played with a wooden block, oblivious to the history that had nearly followed me home. And I promised her. Not out loud. Not in a letter. Just in my body. In the way I stayed. In the way I listened. In the way I chose differently. I promise. You don't have to carry what I carried. I don't believe in clean endings. But I do believe in closing doors. And I closed that one. Not because it made me whole. But because I finally understood. Not everything broken needs to be rebuilt. Some things just need to be left behind. So we can walk into the life that's still waiting to be made.